Hi everyone, this is Elias Martin of CollectingJapanesePrints.com. Welcome to Woodblock Wednesday, where every Wednesday we get together and discuss Japanese prints, paintings, history, and culture. So today's Woodblock Wednesday will feature two artists that produced two prints of a similar subject, but in a very different way. And I love looking at different artists and contrasting their styles and their printing techniques when they're doing the same subject. And today is one of those days where we get to do that. We're very fortunate to have two really beautiful works here. And so without further ado, let's go to the table and have a look. So I'm going to just pan out so you could see the two works. And we're going to talk about the very large one first. This is an incredible woodblock print by Clifton Karhu. And it depicts Mount Fuji towering over a town here at the lower bottom. The print is called Fujiyama. It was done in the edition of 100. You could see here it's 66 out of 100, this impression. And the print was done in 1988. I'll zoom in here so you could see the year. And the print is just fantastic. It is huge. And I mean, you could literally put 6 Oban size prints on this print and still have room. So let's first talk about Karhu. I've made videos about Karhu before. He was an American who traveled to Japan. He actually was a missionary and went to Japan on missionary work. And what ended up happening is that actually the Japanese people, the Japanese culture, Japan worked on him. And he ended up being an expat. So he converted, and he actually ended up in Japan for the remainder of his life. He was there for 30, 40 years, I believe. And so, he produced some really wonderful prints. And he was interested in color, and his prints really have a strong sense of color. Color is not just an attribute to get a certain effect. It's also sort of a character in his prints. Karhu doesn't necessarily populate his designs with people, but the color itself becomes a character. It animates the designs. It creates tension. It at times creates conflict or just interest. And in this design, I mean, the color for Karhu is in some ways is subdued. His coloration could be quite strong. In some cases, I find it, sometimes it could be jarring, sometimes it could be confronting, and sometimes it's very harmonious, but still in a surprising way. This is, for me, in the way that I read it, it's a little bit more contemplative for Karhu in terms of his color. But nonetheless, it's really powerful. Karhu's work, his best work, is really strong. His personality comes through, and this design is just fantastic. The design itself is great, and I think it would work if it was smaller, but also the size works quite well with the design, that it just gives such an impressive effect seeing it in person. So what we have here again is Mount Fuji in Karhu's sort of patent style of these like carved out blocks of lines and different shapes that create the composition. And then of course we have here at the bottom, as I mentioned, a town. It looks like a little city right at the footstep of Mount Fuji. And this is kind of what you see for those of you who've traveled to Japan and been on the Shinkansen. You're on those bullet trains and you're traveling really fast but you see these towns that are in some ways pretty industrial looking. And then, of course, then you have Mount Fuji in the backdrop, which is this huge, amazing, impressive, awe-inspiring view of a mountain. I mean, you just see it, really quickly, but you see it. And here you get this scene of this towering Fuji and the power of Fuji. And of course, we have this red, this really wonderful red that seems to glow. And it's a bright kind of red that turns into the black of night. And it looks like this is Mount Fuji at dawn. Dawn is breaking and the light of the day is starting to migrate out into the sky as far as the eye can see it. And so there's still some night left, but it's lingering, just holding on, but day is breaking. So the design's really powerful and quite beautiful. And this is a pretty rare design. Though he made it out of 100, they're quite large, and most of them are still being enjoyed by their owners, usually their original owners. And so I was very fortunate to acquire this piece, and you'll be seeing this piece on my website very soon for my upcoming exhibition. But I thought I'd show it today and pair it with a print of the same subject done completely differently. But before we go there, I just want to zoom, excuse me, I just want to zoom in so you could see the print. I should also point out on this print, which is really interesting, is you see this little notch here? For those of you interested in how woodblock prints are produced, this notch is actually called a Kento, and he didn't remove it. Usually it's trimmed so you don't see it. And that notch goes into the wood block. There's a wood block the notch is carved into the wood block as well, and so it fits right in, and that prevents the print from moving around when it's being printed. So it's basically a registration mark, and it's something you just don't see because, again, the artists or publishers usually just trim the print up until this point in the line. But here we have the full sheet, and I think he left it there partly because he needed a larger sheet to produce this work, and it's so large already that excuse me, it would be almost wasteful. So I think he left it for that reason, and it works for me. I love seeing the remnants of how prints are produced, and of course the Kentos definitely signifies how the registration is achieved. So I'm going to go over to my table. Oh, I should also point out that this great design is on the cover of this really great book on Karhu. This was produced when Karhu turned 77. It was a book produced by Mary and Norman Tolman. They were one of the dealers that dealt in Karhu prints in Japan. They may have been the exclusive agents of Karhu. I'm not sure, but they certainly dealt in Karhu prints. And, it's a great book. It showcases his work up until his age of 77, and this work is prominently featured in the book, and rightly so. So the next print that I want to sort of, discuss is this wonderful Hasui print. It's a print done in the 30s, actually 1931, and it's called Daybreak over Lake Yamanaka. And Yamanaka basically means inside the mountain. And so we have a beautiful lake that's within the mountain stretch here. You can almost imagine a path that leads up to Mount Fuji. And it's the same idea. It's the daybreak of a scene of a daybreak by Mount Fuji, and the artists treat the subject in a similar way in a sense that they use these really bright colors. Here we have kind of an orangey red, on the mountain, and it's done quite beautifully with the brighter orange that dissipates. This technique is called bokashi, a gradation of color from dark to light or light to dark, and it creates a really wonderful atmospheric quality. The background here, we have some yellow from the sunrise, and down here we have the colors that are reflected, slightly muted, but they're there, and it actually appears very realistic. The whole print has a really beautiful atmospheric quality to it, and that is because of the way it's printed. It's very soft, and then you see here on the terrain here on the ground, it's also printed with that same softness. And this is the effect that woodblock prints produce so well. The woodblock prints are just great at creating atmospheric qualities, and this attests to that. So it's interesting. Back up, you could kind of see, this print, this Karhu print is so large that it's just really hard to capture on my phone next to this Hasui. You could kind of see the sense of scale. The Hasui print is Oban size, so you could see how massive that print is, but you could see how different the techniques are. Now, I should mention that Karhu carved his own blocks and printed his own designs. He was obviously a contemporary artist, but following sort of the paradigm of the Sosaku Hanga movement, when the artist did everything. And so he designed this print, he carved the blocks and printed the designs. Now, he may have had a printer to assist him, and that was sort of typical of contemporary artists. But generally speaking, he could do it all, though. And that was the point. And Hasui, on the other hand, was hired by the publisher, and in this case, it was Watanabe. And here we have his publisher's seal in the margin. And Watanabe, approached Hasui and said, "Okay, I want a Mount Fuji, maybe a Mount Fuji at dawn." And so, of course, Hasui would go ahead and produce a watercolor. Sometimes he would produce it on site, or sometimes he would sketch on site, or even just do it from memory, and produce a watercolor, show it to Watanabe. And if Watanabe improved at the design, there were tweaks with the color or certain aspects. Maybe Watanabe might suggest adding a little boat there. I've seen those sort of watercolors that were earlier versions of the finished prints, and you would see elements missing or elements that were subtracted from the original watercolor. So it's interesting. And in this case, this scene is idyllic. There's no sense of technology. This scene could be Edo period. There's no city. There's no anything. It's just Mount Fuji at dawn in this idyllic landscape, and it's gorgeous. But Karhu, being a contemporary artist, was interested in showing Mount Fuji's beauty and its grandeur and its immense size, and he compared it, or he put it in the background, and created a really wonderful sort of landscape that compares, obviously, a smaller urban environment that seems to pale in comparison to the size and power of nature. So you do see elements here. There's a city. You see little buildings and possibly factories, because there are a lot of factories around Mount Fuji in a particular area. And so you get that. But you almost forget about it. You almost don't see it. It's just kind of funny, because what your eyes lock into is this really wonderful pattern that Karhu produces, and of course this arresting, beautiful red sky that just seems to pulse. So I don't think I could find two artists that were more different in their approach to making prints as well as the images that they ended up producing. The subject's the same, but the treatment of the subject is very different. And yet, both of them are so beautiful in their own right that it's just a wonderful sort of comparison. So we have Shinhanga of the early mid 20th century, and then we have a contemporary artist from based in Japan, producing a work that was very much contemporary. This is what Karhu would have seen, especially as I said on the Shinkansen, and and he creates something that's just so fantastic. So I noticed a few of you are starting to join me. I'm early today, and I wanted to do this video early because I have so many things I need to do later that I thought I might as well do it now before those things become more pressing, and then I miss a video. So I want to encourage all of you, if you're just joining us, to have a view of the entire thing, and thank you for coming. So I'm going to zoom in one last time on both prints so you could see the details. I should mention that this black that he used, it's a very deep black that's actually matte. It may come off as kind of shiny because I have a light on it, but in person it's a matte black that brings your eye deeper into the composition, and it's striking in contrast to this glowing red that almost has depth to it. And now here's the Hasui. Well, thank you very much for joining me on another episode of Woodblock Wednesday. I've been really hard at work on my next website update, which I'm hoping will go up in about a week and a half or so. I keep getting consignments for this particular exhibition, and which I'm very thankful for. But it keeps prolonging the exhibition opening. But I suspect it should go up in about a week and a half's time. I'll keep you posted. And the exhibition will feature Western artists working in Asia, and I will feature that beautiful Karhu Mount Fuji in the exhibition. And I may have mentioned this before, but that particular print is considered one of Karhu's masterpieces, and we could see why. It's just fantastic. So it's really I feel really fortunate to be able to showcase that work and share it with all of you. So, something to look forward to. And if you haven't had a chance to go to my website and have a look, I have a wonderful bookstore. I have links to exhibitions and just information about Japanese prints all around the world. So have a look. The website is collectingjapaneseprints.com. And there'll be a wonderful new exhibition coming up in a week and a half or so. So keep your eyes open. So thanks again for joining me. I will see you next week on Woodblock Wednesday.